Well, USC's football bye week is finally over, and the future is bright. Deal with it.
You are Locked On Trojans, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Fight on, everyone. I am your host, Marc, and thank you for making Locked On USC your first listen every day. Whether you're watching on YouTube or wherever you decide you want to download your podcast, we are free. And I want to thank you so much for coming along for the ride. If you haven't already hit that subscribe button on YouTube, do me a favor, hit it. It means a lot. And for those of you who already have, thank you so much. It's much appreciated. Hope everyone's enjoying the ride. If you want to give me some feedback, it's always appreciated. And you can always follow me on my Twitter at Marc Culkin, MarcKulkin. All right, so this episode of Locked on USC is brought to you by Sling TV. Don't miss this week's matchup between USC and Arizona right here on Sling TV, the place you love. Try it today. Look, if you're not going to be in Tucson, you're not going to see USC play Arizona unless you have the Pac-12 network. You can get that with Sling TV. Get it now. All right, so the bye week is over. It gave us a chance to reflect, kind of lick our wounds, and get our mind right for the second half of the season, right? And the team will be practicing on Howard's Field. So, like most Trojan fans, I overindulged on college football from the couch. I used the bye week to kind of lick the wounds, get over that 1-point loss, and kind of, look to the future, see where USC is at, what they need to do, and what some of their opponents look like. So over the weekend, we got to see Oregon hand UCLA their first loss, both in conference as well as overall. They've had a really soft week schedule, the Bruins. They've only had one road game up until their 45-30 loss in Eugene against Oregon. Prior to that, they traveled to Colorado. Following Colorado this year, I'm sorry that you're a Colorado Buffalo fan, but they're having a really rough season. Although they do have one win under the belt. They beat Cal. Don't ask me how. They got it done. Nevertheless, with UCLA no longer undefeated, that leaves Oregon 6-1 as the only undefeated in the Pac-12 conference. Everybody else has one loss: Utah, USC, UCLA. Those are your leaders. You got a couple of teams with 2 losses on the outside looking in, but everyone kind of agrees that the Pac-12 championship is going to go through LA, Eugene, or Salt Lake City. Those are the 4 teams. Out of those 4, 2 will be in the Pac-12 championship game. So, was that Bruin loss to Oregon, was that a good thing or a bad thing for USC? I mean, obviously, this is what the show is all about, USC Trojans. Look, personally, either way, I'm fine. Number one, anytime UCLA loses, brings a big old smile to my face. It sets up the possibility for Utah to go in and defeat Oregon, which means USC can play Utah a second time, this time in Vegas, assuming it will be in Vegas. If Oregon happens to beat Utah, it won't get the same hype that say a UCLA versus USC Pac-12 championship game would be. But if Oregon can defeat Utah, and USC ends up playing them in the conference championship game, hey, that's not bad. There's so many different scenarios playing out here. Again, Oregon or Utah versus USC. It's not quite the hype, but it's still a big game. Travis Dye, he's never beat Utah. He might want to play them in the conference championship game. He talked about that in their 1-point loss to Utah. Then again, he might want to take on his former team, Oregon. Who knows, right? Had UCLA won their game up at Oregon this past weekend. My gosh, that matchup in November it looms really large. It's always been a national game, but assuming USC wins their next 3 games, and we're going to get into this here shortly, that would set them up at 9-1 versus UCLA, who can possibly be 9-1, or have they won in Oregon 10-0. Regardless, this game in November sets up to be pretty big, and I think everyone's looking forward to that. I know I am. So, look, there's not a whole lot I get to talk about as far as USC from this past weekend. They didn't play. They had the bye week. We got to watch Oregon, UCLA, lock horns. UCLA, look, I hate having to give them any credit, but they looked decent on the road at Oregon. I think Oregon played their best game of the season, obviously. Bo Nix looked good. I have to eat a little bit of crow there because I really thought that he would be the guy. If UCLA was to win, excuse me, Bo Nix would be the guy to give it away for Oregon. And ever since that game that he had down in Georgia, or against Georgia, I should say, Oregon's rattled off 6 wins in a row. So give them credit. They bounced back. And we'll see how everything shakes out here in the second half of this season. As I mentioned, USC didn't play, so they didn't get to have a Nissan thrilling moment. However, since we're talking about the potential USC versus UCLA matchup in November, with 2 possible 1-loss teams, let's talk about a Nissan thrilling moment from back in 2001 when USC and UCLA played each other. For those of you who don't remember, USC won that game 27-0. It was Pete Carroll's first year as their head coach. They finished the season 6-6, regular season. They lost the bowl game, Las Vegas Bowl. Won't get into that. Nevertheless, that was their 3rd straight win over UCLA, even though it was Pete Carroll's first year. But it was an emphatic declaration that USC was getting ready to go on a long streak of dominance. The Pete Carroll era was getting ready to kick off. It took a year, 6-6, Las Vegas Bowl. The following year, they went to the Orange Bowl. But in that 2001 matchup against UCLA, they shut out the Bruins 27-0. That was the game where Anton Simmons had that pick 6 where he went between his legs and returned it for a touchdown. Brian Poley-Dixon was the UCLA wide receiver, went off his hands. He kind of thought the ball just landed on the ground somewhere. Next time, he's looking over his shoulder, all of a sudden he sees Antoine Simmons. He's grabbing the ball from between his legs like a goaltender protecting the puck from getting in the net, and he's returning it the other way for a touchdown. I don't think Brian Poley-Dixon has actually recognized yet that the ball went the other way. So hopefully we can have another one of those type of moments, a Nissan thrilling moment when USC and UCLA hook up in November. That would be kind of cool, right? So this week's thrilling moment in college football is brought to you by Nissan. The thrilling designs behind the new lineup from Nissan are intended to empower drivers in vehicles as capable as the driver themselves. When I think of unbelievable abilities on the field for this week's thrilling moment had to have been Anton Simmons, pick 6, 27-0 shutout, Pete Carroll's first year, 2001. So there you go. Once again, this segment has been inspired by the thrilling new designs featured across Nissan's new lineup of vehicles. Pursue what thrills you in the all-new Frontier, Armada, or Pathfinder today. Available now at NissanUSA.com. Okay, so once again, I want to thank you for making Locked On USC your first listen today. For your second listen today, go check out Locked On Sports today, from the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports. Go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. All right, so up next for USC, Arizona, down in Tucson. I mentioned it earlier. If you don't have the Pac-12 network, you better get on the road, pick up a ticket, head out up there. You know what? This should be an easy win for USC. Arizona, they're much better than they were last year. I think offensively, they're much better. So they have the ability to put some points on the board. Jaden Delora, quarterback, transferred from Washington State. They got some nice young receivers. We'll see how they do defensively. This has the potential to be a high-scoring game if USC's defense doesn't travel. So far, it has on the season, save for the game against Utah. We won't rehash that. We know how the score got to be that was. We're over it. It's been a week. Time to move forward. Nevertheless, we'll talk more about Arizona during the week because you get Locked On USC 5 days a week. And today is the first episode, Monday. We'll break them down more as we get closer to the game and bring you the practice reports and coaches' quotes, etc. But that being said, USC, they're going to win. They got the Arizona game. After Arizona, USC does not leave Southern California for the rest of the season. They'll come home. They will host Cal for homecoming, Colorado on Friday night, travel via bus to Pasadena to take on UCLA, and then they will finish up the regular season at home against Notre Dame. We'll see how that goes. So after what we learned, from watching UCLA on the road this past weekend, I think everyone would agree that USC versus UCLA coming in is going to decide who plays in the conference championship game, and perhaps even depending on how the game plays out, USC wins that game. Notre Dame definitely propel them right into the playoff picture. They're already kind of in the right now. USC, they win Arizona at Arizona. They win the two gimme games, Cal and Colorado. They're 9-1 heading into that those final two rivalry weekend games. Look, Notre Dame, they're down this year. We get it. But this is you still want to win that game, right? USC needs to break that losing streak to Notre Dame. And it's going to help with recruiting. So help me, Elijah Page. We've already seen how that happens. We don't want to look too far past Arizona, Cal, Colorado, but those are the three games that are going to be the buffer between getting themselves ready, healthy. Well, do you need Eric Gentry for these next three games? Probably not. Do you need Jordan Addison for these next three games? Probably not. Nevertheless, that's how things are setting up. And that's what's ahead of USC right now, coming off the bye week. Get to 9-1. That's the goal. Obviously, one game at a time, but 9-1, and now all of a sudden things get serious. They're already a top 10 AP poll. The college football playoff poll will be coming out in the next week or so. I don't think it's this Tuesday, but soon. I mean, we're already past week 7. We're heading into the final quarter of the season, the last 4 games. Well, in USC's case, 5 games because they have the bye week. But many teams are heading into week 8. There you are. So let's not take the season for granted. Let's appreciate every second of it because things are about to get serious. So again, hopefully USC is 9-1 heading into UCLA week as well as, and then 10-1 10-1 heading into Notre Dame week. Let's see here. I think it's safe to say USC fans are going to be looking forward to both games with so much on the line. And if you're not sweating, you should be. I sweat. We all sweat, right? If you're a sweater, a sweaty person, maybe I should say, why don't you head on over to SweatBlock? I'll tell you a little story. I mentioned this before last week on our crossover show with Locked On Utes. I sweat profusely, especially when it's humid. I'm a disgusting pig. When it's hot, I don't get the armpit sweat. I sweat from the ears, from the neck, from the head, and without getting too personal, everywhere. That's all you need to know. So I'm sure SweatBlock is going to be able to fix this embarrassing problem. It's not just underarms with me. SweatBlock gives you the confidence to wear what you want without embarrassing underarm sweat, chest sweat stains, whatever it might be. SweatBlock is going to give you the confidence to wear what you want whenever you want. The SweatBlock wipes were featured and tested on the Rachel Ray Show by firefighters. Those guys sweat. So if you are someone you loves experiencing embarrassing sweat or odor, try SweatBlock. Save 20% with your promo code LOCKEDON at sweatblock.com. It's also available on Amazon. Okay. Oh, so it's Monday. The new AP poll is out, and that means it's time to see where USC landed. They actually moved up a couple spots. They moved up from number 12 to number 10 in the AP poll. They moved up one in the coaches poll. They're number 11. We don't pay a whole lot of attention to the coaches poll, mainly because coaches don't have time to watch other games and give a valid, solid opinion on how other teams performed. They typically leave that up to sports information directors or a trusted assistant coach, GA, you name it, grad assistant. Very, very rarely is the head coach voting. Again, I really don't know why we have a coaches poll, to be honest with you. Nevertheless, here you go. AP poll just released. Georgia, and they have 31 first place votes. They remain number 1. Ohio State number 2 with 18 first place votes. Tennessee, they're looking solid. Got to give it to them. Number 3, 13 first place votes. Michigan held on to number 4. Clemson at number 5. Who was the Yahoo that gave him a first place vote? Whatever. Number 6, Alabama. Number 7, TCU. Number 8, Oregon. They got a nice little bump from their win against UCLA at home. Number 9, Oklahoma State. USC, number 10. They're actually tied with Wake Forest for number 10. For whatever reason, Wake Forest is getting a whole lot of credit, moving up, I think, 5 spots because they beat a one-loss Boston College team. Personally, I think they want to keep Wake Forest relevant as the second best team in the ACC. They got to keep Clemson relevant. Again, who voted Clemson as the number 1 team in the country? They benched their starting quarterback, DJ Uiagalelei. That's another story to keep an eye on. So, since there's no number 11 team, number 12, UCLA, 13, Penn State, 14, Utah. So, the Pac-10 plus 2, you've got 4 teams bunched up from 8 to 14. Not bad, right? If you're a conference rah-rah guy. I'm not. Number 15, Ole Miss. They dropped after their loss to LSU. 16, Syracuse. Number 17, Illinois. Number 18, LSU. 19, Kentucky. 20, Cincinnati. 21, North Carolina. 22, Kansas State. 23, Tulane. 24, North Carolina State. 25, South Carolina. So that's your new AP poll top 25. Looking at the teams in front of USC, Oregon and Utah play each other. I don't think it really matters. Again, I don't care who wins. Personally, you probably want I probably want Oregon to be as highly rated as possible. So should USC play them in the conference championship game, I'm assuming USC is going to be somewhere closer to that 8, 7, 6, 5 spot by the time that game rolls around, assuming they beat UCLA and Notre Dame and they're 11-1. They are going to be firmly in the playoff hunt. So I think USC is positioned just fine for where they're at. And let's remember, everybody, last year at this point, we weren't talking about USC in the playoff hunt. We weren't talking about USC even playing in a decent bowl, let alone having to settle for the Rose Bowl. That's right. USC is going to have a good season, and they might have to settle for the Rose Bowl. How does that sound? We're going to talk more about that throughout the week. Again, bye week Monday, we're just getting back into it. Lots of USC stuff to come. So I want to thank everyone once again for making Locked On USC your first listen. Your top 10 USC Trojans will be taking on the University of Arizona Wildcats this Saturday in Tucson. If you don't have the Pac-12 network, head down there or get Sling TV. Otherwise, you're going to have to check in on Locked On USC tomorrow to get your latest news and information. I'll have it for you. So until then, everyone, you know what to do.